All right, the next card we have is the Missionaria Protectiva. Obviously themed for the Bene Gesserit, kind of like missions that they send out into space, and then they try to condition to side with the Bene Gesserit and let them in and all that good stuff. So, what do you guys think about this card?
Being fairly honest, this is effectively just an upgrade of Recon,
Mm-hmm.
except it's a very subjective upgrade of Recon because it's only actually better if you're going specifically down having a Bene Gesserit deck, and you specifically have to have this drawn with another Bene Gesserit card, and then use that card first.
Yes.
Which the problem with a lot of Bene Gesserit cards is a lot of them have effects if you use them after you use another one. There's actually not very many cards that are Bene Gesserit that have their ability regardless. Mother Mahayim, for example, you have to have used afterwards. This is another one. Gene manipulation gives you a stronger effect if you use it afterwards. That is a bit of a trap with gene manipulation sometimes,
Yeah.
or with Bene Gesserit in total. That you have to kind of. A lot of the cards require setup, and if you only draw one of the cards and you're hoping more Bene Gesserit cards turn up and then they don't, you kind of, you're not really doing a whole lot of it. And that's the problem with Project Eva. To be fair, its ability is not bad, to be able to get an influence bump for visiting a city, that should not be ignored. That's pretty good. In the hands of like a Helena player, that's very strong.
Yeah.
And I would say this is a card that for Helena is actually pretty decent. And also, if you've picked up the voice,
Yes.
you can obviously set this card up and you can guarantee access to a city. However, the only problem with that is that players will see it coming. And so if you're like threatening any alliances, players should be aware that that's going to come, and they might take preemptive measure to stop you from stealing alliances where possible. So that's the only problem with it. But yeah, it's not a bad card, I guess, but it requires setup, deck synergy, and if you don't have any of those, then it's kind of not really doing anything. At least it only costs one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd have it just above the Spice Hunter. I see these as very similar cards. I think it's better definitely than Spice Hunter. Though Spice Hunter does give you faction access, but yeah, I think this card's stock goes up a bit depending on your leader, right? So Helena, maybe even Beast, who's probably always going to be going to like a blue space every other round or every round. So could be very good for him, but likely for this to work, you have to have everything kind of aligned, right? You have to have enough Bene Gesserit cards in the row.
The other issue with this card as well is the fact it's only city access has a multitude of issues.
Yeah.
First being that there's only two cities you can actually visit without some kind of cost. You need 2 water to go to research station. You need Fremen access to get to Siege. These are problems, which means early game it's not easy to use these because there's literally 2 spaces that you can go. And because it's so limited with your access, it tends to force you to use Projectiva kind of. I always find that you want to try and leave your city access as late as you can in your turn, obviously to
Mm-hmm.
get troops in as late as you can, to try and so you're not like throwing the troops early and then people know they've got to put in loads and then they'll end up beating you. You want to try and leave it late. Because the way Project Tiva works, it has such limited access, it kind of forces you to go there sometimes sooner than you would like, which can be a bit issue if you're trying to win combat to her. So I think that it's a minor thing that I reckon, but I think it's worth noting.
Yeah, I think I'm the one who's got this this card a bit higher, seven
Yeah, you have a
spots higher than the
59.
rank.
Yeah.
I think that reflects not only my higher valuation of the influence tracks, perhaps, but also my early games, my earlier experience, just putting together Benny decks. I think I would, if I was to redo this today, I would bring it back down a little bit. But generally, I think I value this one a bit higher.
Play a lot of Helena. Like, this card goes up in value. I'm really bad with her. I almost never use her personally, so I generally don't make use of this. And as we've mentioned before, the problem is you start filling your deck with lots of cheap cards. It makes it a bit awkward and clumsy to use. Whereas you can just get hold of one half decent one. It's usually better for you in the long run, anyways. There's a lot of cards that give you influence bumps for all sorts of reasons. So you can do better than this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really it's hard to evaluate here, and why I have another similar card, Dr. Yui, just slightly ahead, is that Dr. Yui's agent ability always is on, and the mission area is contingent on your deck. But what I think, like what we're all kind of saying is that if you get the right deck, if you start building like a 3 or 4 card Bene Gesserit deck, which is pretty good usually, then this could feel unbalanced or broken to other players. Where you're like, I'm just gonna go here, I'm gonna throw in some troops, I'm gonna go up on this track. It's like it just starts feeling a little bit, swingy. I think so. This card could be very very powerful, but it just really depends.
It's very inconsistent.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's move on. We have a tie for the next for Jessica of Arrakis and Arrakis Recruiter, which that's interesting. I mean,
it's a bit of a surprise these two have tied. I reckon if you did this tier list in the original Dune, they would not be tied, not remotely.
no, I agree.
I suppose we should probably tackle Recruiter. I reckon it's pretty straightforward. Again, it's just another general boost to your recon card, except the fact that it gives you an extra troop, which I think is not actually all that bad, considering that troops are. I do feel troops are a little harder to come by now in Dune Imperium, purely because rally troops doesn't exist, which was a super cheap way just to garrison up. So, especially in like the first turns 3 and 4, and maybe 5, I think Recruiter has some value. Because there will always be some people who will throw in some troops in the first couple of turns, first skirmishes, especially if they're like decent rewards. It tends to leave garrisons fairly barren, which means that Recruitment can be a really nice way to make up for that. Much like, say, the Beast Signet Ring, it's basically does exactly the same thing. It can be a nice way to capitalize on those sort of like early to mid game combats where resources are very limited, and this is a nice way to get over the edge. And even if you don't use it, it's still got a 1 persuasion. It's still got a sword, which can have some nice artillery synergy, but it's not a great card by any stretch of imagination. But I don't think it's too shabby.
Patience, you rate this one pretty low. Yeah.
Yeah, I have this one third from the bottom. This is definitely on the. I would never pollute my deck with this card unless I actually have artillery or the Imperial Bashar. Like, unless I'm actually trying to multiply swords. That's basically the only time I would.
Do you ever play Beast? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
or is it just 100% Tessie all the time?
No. I play all the leaders.
I'm just
for
teasing.
Sure. Definitely. Yeah. I definitely lean towards the influence track, and I find myself even playing Beast sometimes pivoting towards an influence heavy game. Like I just find combat points so unreliable and so competitive. But that being said, there's lots of good. Like I'm much more when I'm playing a more combat game. Like even the Tessia game that I just won in the tournament, I like won on combat, and it was just I pivoted towards harvesting spice and going for highliners. I find this is just muddies my deck. I don't want this card.
That's fair.
Late game, this card is no good. Let's be frank. In turns like 5, 6, 7, this card is not really doing anything because now everyone's got their forces ready. They've got their horror projectors. They've got like their secret forces. There's been shipping. But in the first couple of turns, you can pick this up. It can be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What about Jessica of Arrakis?
Yeah, I feel like my ranking again yanked her up a bit, like Missionaria, because you guys were both below, right?
Just a bit below. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all around the same, I guess. I just it's the same thing. Like it's very Benny deck specific, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You have her at 60. We have her at 67 and 68, respectively. So
I think the issue with Jessica is the fact that she's only got mining symbols, which makes her kind of difficult to use because it means that, for example, if you want to do a lot of shipping, you can't really use Jessica, or you don't really want to use her because if you use her first, then you're not really doing anything with her. You're just using it for the symbols. You don't get the double card draw because you, again, like other cards, you need to play another Bene Gesserit card first, and this is the problem with the decks. I will say that this card paired with Weirding Way can be pretty decent, and can have some use. If you have like you can Weirding Way to do something else that you actually want to do. For example, maybe go do whatever. And then use that to use Jessica Arrakis, say, to go instead of shipping. That's pretty good, and you're getting your full use out of her. But other than that, it's just, I think it's just too clumsy a card to use nowadays.
I agree. I think she was better in the base game where you could high roll really well, and the extra card draw was a little bit better. I think it's still very good. If you can manage to get Jessica's card draw going off, it's good. Um, it's just sort of
Yeah,
weird.
totally.
Yeah, it's a clunky card to use, a little bit like the mission area, and so I just have it around the same area. Like all of these cards are kind of interchangeable for me. For the
She's the
last like,
promo card, right?
she was the promo card. Yeah, yeah,
I
Yeah,
didn't
so
know
she
that.
came in between. So
yeah,
she's
yeah.
got, I guess the two swords, that's not shabby again. It's just
It's
so
okay.
niche, right? Between only having the yellow symbol, only being able to get the two cards. Like there's just so many conditions to play in
Mm-hmm,
her,
mm-hmm.
I guess is the thing. So she's niche for multiple niches. She's niche if you're building the Benny deck. She's niche if you're building a combat deck with swords, if you got artillery or Imperial Bashar, you just want swords. She's niche if you're trashing cards and can replace one of your yellow cards with her. But she doesn't stand alone, I guess. Maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, I think the issue is with the amount that she costs. There's just so many better cards you can get for the same cost. I think that's also the
Yeah.
issue. There's so much more value to be had elsewhere, which is a bit of a shame.
Agreed.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point because mission area costs one. Like
Yeah,
Brackus Recruiter is that one or two? I forget
it's
if
two.
All right, let's move on. We have an Imperial Spy. Pretty close average rating here. I think we all kind of agree this one's just okay.
I do have a soft spot for Imperial Spy. I'm not gonna lie. I quite enjoy this card. And I will happily admit that purely on the basis that this card trashes itself.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the fact I'm not very good at trashing my deck. It is a weak spot of my game. I have a habit of not trashing anywhere near enough. So the fact that I can go to a faction, get a point, get some resources, and get an intrigue, and just trash this card immediately. I mean, like for me, you can't say that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Do admit that this is not exactly going to win you a game, but if you're kind of like, especially for some leaders where you like go into the Emperor, I think is pretty decent. Like this in the hands of the Beast, I think is pretty solid because Beast, I think, wants to target the Emperor Alliance. He can be very effective at doing so. Obviously, for the extra troops that he can get out of that to win more combats. But
Right.
even so, it's just a one used, run and dump. You get an intrigue bonus out of it. I mean, it's for two costs, that's not too bad.
It's not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and we're all pretty close in our rankings, so I think we generally agree on this one.
All right, now we have a big jump here in our rating average here for Imperial
Oh,
Shock Trooper.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see why we ranked them this high or low.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a bit with Sardaukar Infantry. We did cover Shock Trooper. I disagree. I think Shock Trooper is rubbish. You all think he's actually not that bad. But we've talked about this largely, the fact that he requires setup to be of more use, which is a bit awkward and clumsy. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to do that, I would just grab Sardaukar Infantry and call it a day.
So the reason I rated him pretty high, probably a little too high, about 44.
Yeah.
The reason I rated him that high is if you, and this is sort of like kind of more what I do, but if you are going for a Bene Gesserit Alliance play and you really want to, like, you can draw into it pretty easily. So you go for breeding and then try to hit up Emperor track thing. He's actually quite insane, but like you need to have a lot. You're right. You need to have a lot of things set up right. You need to have the actions. But if you get him, he's kind of great. He's kind
He
of
has
great.
uses, but all it requires is for one person to go to wealth, and that's more often than not, that's its bonus gone.
Well, I mean, you could always go to. I mean, you can go to
You could go,
Conspire.
you
I
could
mean,
go conspire, but outside of like the first like 5, maybe 6 turns, like you don't really want to be going there because you want to already be set up, and you want to be using your spice at other things. So, so I think that's the only issue.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm
like I
not
said,
sad that he's here, but yeah.
yeah,
he's
I
kind of
don't.
he's kind of the definition of one trick pony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he really has one trick. You gotta have played on him on the Emperor, one of the Emperor spaces, and you have to be after the combat when you draw him. It's a conflict. It kind of puts you into a corner now. If you've got a really tight deck in the late game, and you're really in heavy with some competitive conflicts, and you've got artillery or Imperial Bashar, then this card can make all the difference, right? But I think it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty niche. I probably would actually even rank him a bit lower than I've got him. I think I would bump
And the other
Freighter
issue
Fleet him.
is as well is that there aren't actually that many cards that get you to the Emperor anyways. There's not many.
Mm,
And some of them you don't want to use particularly because you might want to keep them for their reveal effects anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the other problem. Firm grip, for example, early on great, but later on you want to be using that for reveal potentially because it's full persuasion. You're buying Spice Must Flows, so
Yeah.
so you might even like kind of mess with your own trying to attempted deck synergy because you don't want to use it. Sardaukar Legion, you might want to be losing that as a reveal to get a load of troops in a combat, so you're not going to use it physically. So that's the other issue with this card.
It's a good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Really good point. Yeah, I think I should have him a little bit lower, I believe. Yeah, I would probably put him much lower.
Replace him with Guild Accord.
Nope. um, but yeah, it's okay. I'm rating him too high here, but I think it's right around where he should be on average. All right, next up we have Freighter Fleet. Freighter Fleet. I really like this card. Or not as much as BlackShadow, but I like this card.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, this card is usually fairly. I think it's sought after a bit more than it probably needs to be. To be fair, at 2 cost, just any kind of unloading, you get a bump on shipping. That can't be bad. And obviously, his card synergizes very well with decks that allow with obviously unloading your cards like Truth Sayer, maybe Guild Administrator if you've gone down that route, stuff like that. This card with Hollow Projectors is of course very strong.
Yeah, yeah.
Can be synergized incredibly well with getting troops into combat. Which is why I think this is pretty solid. And again, at 2 cost, it's pretty cheap. You're gonna get some use out of it somewhere, but it can get a little clunky late game. I think sometimes the only issue, where shipping kind of, I think, does tail off in value in like the last turn or so, because obviously you're busy trying to do other stuff and that.
Yep.
And obviously, if you've got this in your hand, you're going to struggle to buy like Spice Must Flows and that sort of thing. So it does come with some cost. This.
Yeah, my take on Freighter Fleet is I think similar to yours, except I would even like I don't want to have these reveal cards for no persuasion muddying up my deck in the mid to late game when I'm trying to get Spice Must Flows. Generally, the thing that I've seen done really well with Freighter Fleet, and that I don't think experienced myself, or maybe once, is having one of the techs where you discard a card.
Yeah.
Right, Hollow Projectors. Yeah.
Something else. There's several of them.
There's a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the one where you actually get to
the Infiltrate one.
Use Helena's ability? What's that one called again? That tech?
Invasion ships.
Yep.
Invasion ships.
Really good. This.
Yeah. So I've seen people with invasion ships with Hollow Projectors. There's at least one other where you discard, with the Freighter Fleet in their hands, or even 2 of them in their hand, and that's a powerful combination.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'd say in that niche situation, I would go for it.
Yeah. It has some cool synergies. I think it's just one of those neat cards that allows for a lot of tricky play. It has a lot of like play to it. That's one of the things that we haven't really talked about, but some of these cards have a lot of play to them, and some of them have very little play to them. They're rigid. They're one-trick pony cards, right? This one is kind of a one-trick pony card, but the fact that the shipping track is so flexible and that it can happen, you can get troops in if you recall, if you went to like the Freighter Fleet space, like a desert space, right? You go to a desert space, you get some spice, then you trash it with some effect, like maybe you had a cull in hand, which is kind of insane. You can trigger things that people weren't expecting, or just discarding it or whatever is pretty great too, because I think you can reveal and discard it. Isn't that correct or not?
Yes, it's unload. So reveal, discard, trash, all very good.
So can you trigger it? Well, so if you reveal a thing, it's now considered in play, though. You can't discard it, right?
No.
Right. Okay.
But
Yeah.
you could trash it. You could have it revealed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, a play I've done once is to, and it's pretty cool. Like if you're like in like 3rd or 4th position and you're trying to do a lot of shipping, one thing you can do very coolly if you can pick this up is like go smuggling. And then look to try and get this into your hand, get it sort of revealed, and then say like go selective breeding or something the following turn, to get an early bump, say with the Spacing Guild, to get yourself into this other shipping sooner. Just getting this card, revealing it, and then trashing it almost immediately is not something a lot of people do. But I think it's something that people should do more because it can get you a nice leg up early on if you're in a bit of a bad spot.
I agree with that 100%. Like that's when I would find it most useful is if I could get a couple of early uses and then trash it for the bump on
Right.
the shipping track.
Right. Absolutely. All right, we're up to Guild Chief Administrator, and we're all pretty close on this. I have a little bit higher than you, but I'd like you guys are all pretty close at 59 and 61. So why don't you talk about why you like or dislike Guild Chief Administrator?
Up to you.
Go ahead, Shadow.
Okay. So I think this card, like on the face of it, looks pretty good. There's some decent access, Spacing Guild. The ability to trash cards, I think, is obviously going to be attractive. The fact that you can discard and trash a card at the same time means it can be the same card.
Yes.
So again, combining this with unload effects like, say, Freighter Fleet or Treachery, or even if you're feeling really crazy, like Boundless Ambition, which I have done once before, which was very fun. You can do some pretty cool things with this. And the reveal effect is also not bad. The shipping bump and the persuasion, which kind of negates the issue Freight Fleet has. It kind of hinders you from buying spice. The problem I think with Guild Admin is it's a bit of a clumsy card to use.
Yeah.
The fact that you're discarding to trash means that you're always kind of, unless you have a lot of cards that require unloading, you're always making it difficult to buy other good cards in your deck. Because even those little dunes or whatever else that you might not doing a lot are still adding to your persuasion buy to get hold of other decent cards. And Guild Chief Admin is one of those ones that you almost kind of want to like maybe use for a little bit and then maybe even consider just trashing itself, because once it's done a bit of culling your deck, it almost becomes, I think, a little bit of a liability. This and you don't want to be using it just for its reveal effects, because I don't think the reveal effects is good enough standalone here. And besides, if you're using this, you haven't got a lot of access. You've got cities. You could use it maybe for like access to go shipping, I guess. But you are culling your cards down. And if other players, if you have a game where someone's like using a lot of like Mervyn Mahim, for example, or Tessie Humanity, it can leave you really awkward on like having very few cards in your deck, and that can be really inhibitive.
That's true. Yeah.
I agree on that. I think I would move it up a couple of spots probably, based on our discussion, and so we'd probably end up right around the same spot. Shadow, I think the guild chief administrator, I think she's got a little bit of a few things, with the discard, or sorry, the reveal for the bump on the shipping, one persuasion, right? If she had two persuasion plus the bump on the shipping, then she's great, right?
Huge.
Like, and same thing, you got a discard to trash. The access is kind of nice, but it is the guild spacing guild track.
You never see this get used on to go to like spacing guild. I've almost never seen that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just feel she's just really mediocre, I guess. You got a little bit of little things, but she's not really strong in any big way. Like if I've got a Benny deck, then Missionary Protectiva can actually really be a strong card in my hand. Whereas I don't think there's any case where Guild Chief Administrator is like a really strong card.
So to counter that, I don't think that she's ever really a very, very good card. But I think that this is and I think you're right. If this had two persuasion, this might be in my top 15 cards, honestly, because the effect, the power comes from the ability to manipulate unload effects in this card. Really, it is like the unload enabler, right? You get two unload effects for one action. The problem with that is most of the unload effect cards don't have persuasion anyway, and so you're cluttering your deck with those. The other problem is that the access on this is awkward. The access it's a blue symbol, it's a yellow symbol, it's a triangle, it's a circle, and then it's guild. So the guild one is like you never really see that very much. I mean, it's fine. I've seen people do it for the shipping, and I think this pairs very well with cards like Freighter Fleet, where if you get Freighter Fleet in this and you ship, you go up, you can discard the Freighter Fleet and then immediately trash it. And then you get 3 bumps in one action, which is very powerful. And if you ended up with interstellar shipping, you get 4. Like that is crazy powerful. So like there are very, very good high upsides for this card, but it's also, as you said, a little bit clunky. The persuasion is really bad. Doesn't it give you 1 sword as well? I think it gives you 1 sword. No, it doesn't give you any sword. Okay, just 1 of that. Yeah, it's just a little awkward to reveal. you want to use it for its effect, and you only want to use this card and only buy this card if you have a way to really maximize it. You know, a water
One
peddler
real
maybe.
awesome. I do apologize.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I say one real awesome synergy you can run with this is this with X Guild Compact,
Yes.
and you can buy like a Holtzman engine, or flagships, almost with virtually no spice, and it's basically unblockable. But but again, you have to combine this with going shipping, of course, and that stuff as well to get you up to that fourth bump, and you can get like tons and tons of spice off all you're buying. But again, it is this own issue. It kind of gets in its own way sometimes. This card, I think, is the only issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this strategy that you're raising about, I don't know how you phrase it. It was a really nice way. Unloading. What did you call it? Unlocking. What did you say? Unloading.
God, what did I say? I'll have to play it back. Unload synergy? I'm not sure.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Unload synergy. That's a good phrase. So I think that's an underdeveloped part of my game, and that's probably why I'm undervaluing its potential. Because, like you said, there's multiple things. It could be multiple cards that have powerful unload effects, like
Mhm.
like just even an in the shadows 1-2 punch, right? Like
It's insane within the shadows. Yeah, I've seen that too.
yeah,
Yeah. And steal lines
yeah.
is out of absolutely nowhere.
And I think that's important, and it's a one of the more, the game is complex and deep, but it's also simple. But the unload combos are a more complex
Yes.
strategy to develop with your deck, and because you also need to keep your deck thin enough, and this card helps with that in order to make sure you get your unload cards together with this card, right? Like if you have a
Absolutely.
15 card deck, then you're really gonna have to get lucky for that to happen.
So I think this card is great in an Armand Ikaz deck because you're probably going to be buying those cheap cards anyway. Most of the unload cards you want are 3 or lower in cost, so you can use your ring to snatch them out of the row. And then if you pick this up, you're just really set up to kind of like churn through their effects. It does hurt in other ways. Obviously, everything you do in this game can hurt you in another way that you're not expecting, right? So buying all these cards that have low persuasion means you're probably not going to buy a Spice Must Flow unless you get really lucky. Or something else, right? Maybe you're not going to go much combat. Although I'd say like the benefits of this card is that it does give you access to Highliner, which is nice. It's just a nice thing to have. And one of them,
I'm just thinking.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say I'm just thinking as you talk about it, having the unload combo with the water peddler, for
It's great.
example.
Yeah,
Then get more water, get more spice. Then the next round or couple rounds later, couple turns later, use Guild Chief Administrator to go Highliner, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna have to try her more.
It's a cool
Yeah.
card, and I think it's underused. So when I've seen it, when I've used it, I've really liked what I've done with it. But
Low key, this could be pretty decent in epic mode. Like we haven't explored
Absolutely.
very much as a community, but I think low key could be pretty decent because the game's just longer, so you're gonna get more runs of your cards.
yeah,
That's the whole thing, right? I think a lot of people's thinking around cards does have to do with like having the time to actually build and manage your deck, which in a average 7 round, maybe 8 round game, you have 10 points. Like it's for 4 players, which is what we're used to playing in the online community. There's just not enough time for that deck trimming and management to really maximize those combos.
yeah. No, you're 100%
Get the
right.
most-
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We have Chani, which we all
Yeah.
kind of rate around the same. I'm a little high with Chani here, I guess, at 46, and then 55 for Patience, and then 63 for BlackShadow.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to start with this one?
Well, I like her. 2
Yeah.
persuasion, get a water when I take her. She's pretty simple. She's not complicated. She gives
Yeah.
me some faction access. She's just simple. She's a Fremen too, right?
She's a Fremen,
He's
yeah.
from, so basically,
Yeah.
which can be.
Yeah. I like her, but I don't think I'd move her much from where I've got her. Yeah.
She has limited access, right? I mean, that's one of the problems with her. She's good, but nothing really stellar.
The fact I think the most fascinating thing with Chani is the fact that you can reveal her to retreat as many troops as you want, which like on paper, pretty nice, but I don't really know how often you're gonna be sending a load of dudes just to retreat them with Chani. Like the idea of going into a massive arms race against someone and charging them through the teeth to win a combat just to retreat everyone so you can like win the next combat. I don't think that has as much value as it sounds like. Maybe in a free player game where like you have it's much more direct combat because you use against the same people over and over again. Instead of
Mm.
a 4 player where you could do it with someone, and obviously screw with them. They use a ton of resources for like potentially not a huge reward. There's still 2 other players in the game who've been spending that turn probably building up their garrison. You can't keep doing that. So
Yeah.
I think in free player she's probably a little better on that front of things.
Yeah.
Mm.
But
I
can't
agree.
really go much further than that. You get a water. I guess that's okay, but she is 5 cost, and that is expensive.
Yeah, I 100%
That is
agree with
very
you.
true.
Yeah.
That's very true. We haven't talked about the fact that she's 5 cost, and that needs to be considered here in terms of our criteria.
Yeah, for me, I have her a little high here, and she's higher than. Is she higher than my water peddler? No, she is higher than the water peddler. I think I'd probably have them pretty close together, and that I think the 2 persuasion is really what rated her higher for me because I rate higher the usually the 2 persuasion cards. For me, Shawnee's retreatability is not even there. I've never used it. I think I've seen it used once, and maybe not even 2 in effect where it would matter. Like, it's so weird. I guess you could do it if you would just go in early with your combat, your troops. But the problem is you can't retreat your dreadnoughts. I don't know if you ever wanted to retreat your dreadnought. Probably not. So I think that effect is not very good. It's the water, I think, is why you buy her. She's good late game because sometimes you just need that extra water to hit up the research station, right? Or to get the great flat or something, right? Something that really saves your game. And she pops up in the row, and then you're like, I have a solution, So she does that, and she adds to that late game spice must flow strategy. So I think she's not bad. She's just not stellar. She's in the middle of the road, middle of the pack here, and that's probably where she should be.
Yeah, I think if she didn't cost 5, I'd have her higher because an early water. She got 3 different things she can access: blue, yellow, and Fremen. And and she's got 2 persuasion. So for me, that's just a solid run of the mill card in my deck.
Yeah,
That's going to give me a water early when I might really want it. But the fact that she costs 5 is what keeps her a little lower for me, I think.
agreed. All right, Bene Gesserit Initiate is our next one.
I also have a bit of a soft spot for Initiate, but that's purely because I play Paul. That's purely why. Like again, the card draw is as we've mentioned before. If you've got like someone like Paul, obviously it has extra value because you know what you're going to draw into.
Right.
And you're always going to be able to play this somewhere. Any non-faction space, there's plenty of them. You're typically going to be able to use this. Usually in like your first action, you're going to use Bene Gesserit Initiate. And it's a nice way, again, to try. This is one of the few cards that give you the effect regardless, instead of, say, Predictiva or other memory or whatnot sort of thing. So this is a nice way to kind of play something first to give you the setup access for your Bene Gesserit connections later on. But it's more of a utility card, if anything else. Use it for its ability. You definitely don't use it for reveal. One persuasion's not worth it. But yeah, it's a solid card. It's a nice upgrade to your basic deck, and I don't think you can go wrong by picking it up early.
I agree. I'm surprised you have it so low at 61. Patience actually has it higher at 49. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I actually do have it a little bit lower than I thought. I should have probably put it up a little bit more. But yeah, I think this card is fine. However, the value of this card does go down, I think, somewhat drastically the later game. When you want to be having better things for it. Unless you're specifically, what your next couple of cards are going to be, or if you're playing as Paul or someone, in which case you obviously know what you're going to have and you can synergize that very well. But it's fine, like it's nice, but there are better cards you can get for free cost.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I will. Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with you here. I mean, this is just like, for me, this is a bread and butter card. Like, you're never really sad to get it. I'm never going to pick it over other 3 costs, some 2 costs, but it's great. I love drawing cards in this game. Drawing cards gets you points most of the time, and it trades up most of the time if you're building your deck right. So I think it's a strong card. It gives you access to everywhere on the planet and the lands red, and Chom. So like, it basically gives you everything you need except for faction access. I mean, it's like a mini, what do you call them? Thufir. It's like a mini Thufir. that doesn't give you faction access.
This is a nice card to use with Mentat, I will throw out. You know, getting double
Absolutely.
card draw, that's pretty good.
It's 3
Nice way
cards if you're
to
Ilban.
if you're Ilbar, that's free. That's Bene Gesserit Initiate basically turns you into a mini research station. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I love this card personally. Like if I could find a way, I would want to rank it even higher because
Yeah.
it's such a workhorse. It's just such a workhorse card. And also the only thing we haven't really mentioned, I think we've talked about it all, but is just that if you are trying to build a Benny deck, this is the great card to start off with. You can go anywhere you want
Absolutely.
besides the faction.
Great
So
foundation card.
It is the
Yeah.
best. I'd say it's one of the best Bene Gesserit combo cards that you for enabler because you draw an extra card, your chances of hitting your Bene Gesserit card. I mean, that's what you want. So, absolutely. Anything else about Bene Gesserit Initiate? I don't have a lot to say about it actually. Ix Guild Compact.
This could be an interesting one. We will have this all over the joint.
Okay, so BlackShadow has this ranked at 41, pretty high. I have it at 60, and Patience has it at 62. I'll let you go last, BlackShadow, so you can tell us why we're wrong.
I guess I go first because I'm the lowest.
Sure.
I just think it's so niche, and it's but hey, we've had this conversation about unload combos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And its ability, its reveal is an unload, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's got you got the unload ability for the 2 negotiators at with Ix, or you can use it and discard 2 cards to get a dreadnought.
Yeah. So because I don't value dreadnoughts very highly, generally, though they can be really great sometimes, I'm generally not looking for it for that purpose. Also, the idea of discarding 2 cards just makes me shiver. But this is where these unload combos really come in, and I think we just talked about how that's an underdeveloped aspect of the game in general, and my game in particular. So I mean, I assume that's going to be part of the case in favor.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you said. I think it is for me one of the weaker unload cards, if not the weakest unload card, simply because you're getting like an investment in spice, but it's not even real spice. It's like virtual spice for a tech that you might buy. That kind of bothers me. I think its play effect is just fine. I actually like the discard to get a dreadnought early game. This can be pretty nice and actually a cheap way of getting your dreadnought out. But it's a guild access. Does it have any other access? Yeah, that's what really hurts it for me, is that you can't immediately get your dreadnought into the combat unless you win Highliner. And so it's cool, and I've seen people do it, but I always feel like they're going backwards. Like I feel like they get a dreadnought just to take a couple steps back for something they could have bought that was slightly better. That's how I feel about this card. I like the idea, and it's a great enabler. Again, if you can get those combo pieces assembled, like 2 or 3 more of those, then I think this card's value goes up significantly. But for me, I've never really liked it. It's again same kind of argument that I had for the Guild Accord. It's a very rigid card. It doesn't give you a lot of options. You either go to a fold space or Highliner, or you just reveal it, and revealing it feels pretty bad to me. So, all right, tell us why we're wrong.
Can't say you're completely wrong. This card, I think, is one that does require a bit of help from time to time. I think I value this card mainly for the unload feature. The 2 negotiators at Ix, which I think if you can pick this card up early and get 2 free spins out of it, especially if you can get something like Holo Projectors or like Truthsayer or something. I think this card is potentially very dangerous because a lot of techs in this game are very good. And this is a nice way just to get you access to those when you really shouldn't have to. You don't have to worry about getting hold of a lot of spice to get hold of, your Holtzman engines or spice satellites or whatever else you want to go through. This can pay for it almost by itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Would you rather reveal other cards? Maybe so. If you're going with this, you're probably not going too heavily into Spice of Flow early. And obviously, the later this card comes out, the value of this just completely plummets. Like, if this comes out like round 5, is basically a dead card. You're
Yeah,
not ever really
yeah.
doing anything of it unless you're getting it specifically because you know you're going to be like, say, getting guild admin uh, next turn, and you know you can just trash it, for example, while going to Interstellar shipping, which is where this card could be really nice. You know, get a reveal, go Interstellar next turn, trash it at the same time. It's really, really big. I also will say that although it only has access to spacing, which is a problem, this accompanied with as a dispatched envoy to say like Hardy Warriors is can be a lot of fun. You know,
Yeah.
you can get a ton of firepower out of absolutely nowhere and take people completely by surprise. But you have to A, have this card, and then B, have dispatch an envoy, and C, not have a better move.
That's a good
Which, you
point.
know, typically is. You know, and again, having the double card discard is a problem. And you can get into the theory as well. If I've got, like, say, Freighter Fleet as well, then I can discard that. And yeah, you can come up with some unload effects, but that's just so uncommon. You're never really going to have that. You know, maybe using this as a dispatched envoy and, like, get rid of Treachery, for example, is your discard. That's pretty good. That's a lot of forces you can get involved there, but typically you are going to find better uses. But I think the reveal feature for the couple of negotiators, I think it makes you dangerous with tech negotiations because people are wary that you could just pinch a tech at any point. It kind of makes people sometimes not want to go shopping. You know, they're going to be less reluctant to pick up like trading drones, for example, because they're scared they're going to reveal a much better tech that you could just buy basically for free. And that can mess with people a couple of times. They know they're taking a risk if you've got a lot of negotiators up there.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have a question about this. Do you always want to be using Xguild Compact as one of these discard synergy in these discard synergy situations, or would you value it highly just as a standalone card?
I think if you're gonna have it as standalone, you've got to be looking to trash it like fairly quickly. Maybe get like one reveal on it, and then after a second reveal, look to trash it with like selective breeding or something.
Yeah.
If you don't have unloading abilities, like that does make this card pretty awkward. You know, and if you're only gonna get a couple of reveals out of this for 4 negotiator spice, it's not great. I can't really be honest. I mean, that pays for like, you know, invasion ships for free basically if you go to tech negotiation. That's not bad. That's 4 troops and access to whatever you want. But I think yeah, you've either got to be prepared to have unload abilities with this, or you basically looking to trash it pretty quickly.
I think this card goes up in value in a couple ways. It goes up in value if you're playing Romber. Romber's pretty good with this card. He wants to get Dreadnoughts anyway, and he doesn't really have the Solari usually to buy them. So this is a nice way to cheat that a little bit. It also goes up in value if you have or are planning on picking up a detonation devices, because this is a recurring easy way to buy your Dreadnoughts. So I think that there's a lot of good that this card can do under the right circumstances. But I don't play Romber enough to know, but I have just not seen it used by anyone that effectively. Though I have seen it, you know, I've seen a lot of people cash in their tech negotiators for, you know, on the off the back of this card very well. I've seen that's good. I think that's the high point you can really get out of this card, but. Yeah, it's just okay for me.
You're using this to get hold of dreadnoughts, you're basically saying you're going complete all in with combat, which of course is very, very risky.
It is. Yeah.
And you are sacrificing probably a lot of other aspects of your game to do so, which, you know, shouldn't go without saying that's pretty dangerous, you know, and you better be ready to back yourself that you're gonna do it. If this with obviously detonation obviously makes total sense,
But it has to be early, because you want to have detonation early, and then you want to get that going. But late game, it's way harder to make detonation devices work. I think like you have way more people who are contending those conflicts. And so like if you can just sneak out a win there here, like for the detonation devices, and then trash it, I think that's a really strong play. It has some flexibility, a little bit more than some of my other cards I mentioned earlier, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a shot next time. I'll give it a shot. Okay, Duncan,
All right,
Idaho.
Duncan, there's a huge gap here between us.
Whoa.
Here we are all over.
Okay, so Patience has this at 69. I have it at 56, and BlackShadow at 35. Wow. Okay.
You go first, BlackShadow.
I personally think this card can be pretty solid. I've seen this used pretty effectively. Again, this is one that certain people can use it better than others. But for full cost, I think it does have an issue that it only has city access, which means you've kind of got to use this fairly early. But if you've got like abilities to get like a fair bit of water, the fact there's reveals for a water, I think is very good. A water and two swords reveal means if you're going like a combat deck, you want to be visiting like the Fremen, for example, and like paying for Hardy Warriors. This is a fantastic way to kind of supplement your turns where you're not putting in like going to Hardy Warriors and that sort of thing. I think it's very strong. Can get you access to say like Great Flat more often than you really ought to. Paired of artillery, I think this is dangerous. And then you can use that water, to visit a city for an extra troop and a card draw, which cannot be bad. I think it's pretty good. But it does obviously have limitations. If the fact you're going cities means you probably have to use Duncan as like your first action, which again you kind of be visiting cities later on. He's not going to be a game winner, admittedly, but I think that his lack of versatility sometimes I think is more made up for the fact that he can synergize very very well with a lot of techs. And especially him with artillery. Revealing for a water and three swords. Maybe even more if you've got, say, like Imperial Bashar. That's pretty frightening.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that. I think his strengths really are that water reveal, honestly. And he's cheap. I usually avoid playing him because he doesn't have any persuasion. And that's really why I ranked him at about 56. Like, I actually rank him lower than Water Peddler because I think Water Peddler is just so much more versatile. It's not that hard to trash it out of your deck. It's not that hard to discard it or something. But Duncan, the play effect is fine. And I think this card goes up in value if you're playing Helena because it's only got the city access, which is sort of weird. Why does he only have city access? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think like if he had access to say like maybe like mining. So although to be fair, if you had access to mining, you'd be really struggling to synergize it with the water spend as well. To be fair, you'd have to be like absolutely rolling in water, which
That's
is
true.
pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's why I've got him so low. Like, it's a paradox. His reveal ability, which is really about the water, because water is the scarcest resource on Dune, obviously, and in the game. So that's what makes him interesting. And the two swords can be useful, especially early game. But it's really the water. But then to use him and to get that troop in that card, you need to spend that valuable water, and that is not worth it to me. Like water can get me spice to go buy that tech or to go to Highliner. Like, I am not going to use, or to get that 3-card draw, I'm not going to use the water for one guard and one troop. Like, there's no. Now, that all being said, I just bought him in like my tournament game last night and used him for exactly that purpose to some effect. So there's the odd time when I'll do it, but it's certainly not a card that I'm going to buy early to build my game around. Usually I would, like you said, much cheaper to have him as a water peddler. I actually got into a discussion in my Board Game Geek post with somebody who was calling into question my low ranking, and I actually bumped him up a little bit. I had him even lower. I bumped him up a little bit as a result of that discussion, and the counter argument that the person made, was really around the value of the water and that I was undervaluing that water. So I do agree, but I think this is like a much more expensive water peddler, right?
Yeah, I mean the reveal. We can't really understate how much revealing for a water can mess with people's strategies or their own individual mathematics in their head, right? So they're like, I have only access to Great Flat next round. No one can get it from me. Boom, you reveal Duncan, Idaho. You go there first. I mean, those things happen, and it makes it pretty strong. Same thing with Water Peddler or like buying a Chani. Those cards kind of all, I feel like kind of fall into a similar grouping of kind of like a gotcha. But I do think Duncan, Idaho has some real good play to him, especially if you're rolling in water, which doesn't happen that often. But if you are and you have some extra water, going to like, Siege is you just spend the water, or that's fine. Or you can go to Arakeen, which is usually better to draw 2 cards and get the extra troop. Now, 2 troops and 2 cards for 1 action for water. That seems pretty reasonable. I think that's probably the best return on your investment. I mean, getting a card, an intrigue, and 2 troops from Carthag is also great. You just go whichever one you really think you need. Because I do value drawing cards, I have them a little bit higher on my ranking than, like, say, like Weirding Way or like Ixguild or Freighter Fleet. I like that a little bit more, but yeah.
Hey, I'm down with drawing cards. I just don't want to pay a water to do it. But I agree
Agreed.
with you that Arakeen is the best spot for him if you're going to use him for his blue
Yeah.
in the city. Something we haven't talked about at all in a while maybe is just like once you have the Sayadina, then all of a sudden Duncan's great, right? Just like Water Peddler is, or anything that gives you water. So that's a little niche situation that makes Duncan all the more valuable.
Yep.
I think always
Sayadina.
frustrating with Duncan is that he's not. Maybe there's a little reason. The fact he's not a Fremen card. I always found that a bit weird.
Well, he isn't a
I've seen this.
Fremen. He isn't a Fremen.
I know I'm not so knowledgeable in the lore. It's just I always look at him like, why are you not Fremen? Like you've got the suit thing and everything.
All right. Let's go to Water Peddler. It turns up to be.
Speaking of,
So Water Peddler coming in at 52 for Patience, 55 for me, and 43 for BlackShadow.
I play a lot of Beast.
Yeah.
So I get a lot out of Water Peddler because Beast hitting up Hardy Warriors a lot is a lot of fun. There's just no way about it.
Yeah.
It just means you're constantly just throwing troops into combat. It can make you pretty hard to deal with. This is a very nice way to fund that. And like you can then obviously race a Fremen alliance faster than other people, which is great for Beast because he needs an alliance to get more out of his ring. So there's some nice synergy there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think the fact as well that you literally buy it for 1 cost and get a water, like that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it means that the Water Peddler has value at pretty much all stages of the game whenever it turns up, because you can just pick it up whenever for a water, basically on the house, which is ridiculous, really. And of course, you're unloading this as well for the water. It gets you to Research Station, it gets you to Great Flat, which gets you to Research Station, or Highliner, or Big Tex. There's a lot going on. The issue, of course, is that it has absolutely no use other than that, and that is, of course, a huge weakness of this card.
Yeah.
So it is in danger of cluttering your deck up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? Something that I think I would consider actually moving Water Peddler right up to around where you have it, BlackShadow, and I think that's because not only this unload synergy we've been talking about in this discussion, but also because that is a bit niche, but that's important. But I also just think about when you're playing, how long does Water Peddler sit on Imperium Row? 0 time.
Yeah.
As soon as it flips, somebody grabs it, and that's because it costs 1, and a water is always useful. So right away when you buy it, and I just think that speaks for itself, and I'm probably undervaluing it.
I agree. I actually, having played a lot more with this card since we made these lists, I think I would have it probably around maybe like 30, actually. I value it that much now. Yeah. I think that the fact that there's a couple of really interesting things about this card that make it a standout. First of all, the 1 cost is great because you can buy it and then see what shows up and keep buying. And so that gives you a little bit of tempo advantage. And I've seen it where people would go like, buy this card, flip over in the shadows, buy that card, flip over Bene Gesserit Initiate, buy that card. It's like, oh my God. Like the amount of like the cascading effects that this just simple buying of a Water Peddler can have is pretty massive. It also gives you a water for doing nothing. So it just sits in your deck and does that. But one of the things that has sort of cropped up in my mind as I've been playing this game is late game, you never want to visit still suits. Like you just don't want to.
Yeah, late game, its value goes way down. Like turn 5.
And
like it completely.
Exactly. And so Water Peddler is like your visit to still suits. It's functionally the same. It gives you an action for that. And then you can use it to go to, Hardy Warriors or Research Station or Great Flat or whatever you want. And even though it doesn't give you persuasion, even though it doesn't give you access to any board spaces, that usually isn't that bad of a deal. It isn't that bad of a deal as long as you've cut some cards out of your deck, like you're maybe a convincing argument or a couple daggers or something else so that you're drawing other cards. And now, if you're just going to be cluttering this in your deck, you'll probably never draw it. If you have like a huge deck, it's not going to matter. But if you're working on about a 10, 11 to 13 card deck, something like that, this card's going to show up like 2 or 3 times, and it's going to give you some real benefits.
And that's not even talking about the absurd pairing this has with Sardine, of course.
It's insane. Yeah.
Which is there are very few situations I would consider hard passing first turn for Imperium Road cards, but if Sayadina and Water Peddler were there, I would seriously consider it.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, let's go to Local Fence. Local Fence. This is an interesting one.
It's a very cool card, this.
Is cool. You mind if I start here? We have it at 52. BlackShadow is at 52. Patience has it at 50, and I have it at 48. And I think actually I'd probably move this card down a little bit. There's a couple of reasons for doing so. It's not a gain effect, it's a trade effect, which means that you might not have what you need to do it. I mean, ideally you have like the spice or the Solari to trade back and forth or whatever you need. But it also only has the one access, the city access. And I'm surprised. I mean, I think I should have it a little bit lower. There are some other cards that we've been talking about that I do value a little higher than Local Fence, but it does have 2 Persuasion, and I think when I was making this list, I was thinking that Persuasion was really trumping those kinds of cool effects most of the time, which is strange to think about, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah, the city only access is a huge problem with this card. It is by far its greatest weakness. There's no making any mistake about it. That is really difficult to make use of. But the fact that it allows you to convert one type of resource into another, like at least on paper, that's pretty cool. Especially if you manage to say, if you pick this up early on, and you might decide to go spice, you could use this to go to a city, get some troops in, and like pay for your Swordmaster super quick, faster than other people could possibly get there to get yourself some extra actions. This in the hands of Yuna can be really, really fun. Obviously, to get use of even more money on top of what we'd already get, which obviously pays for her signet ring, which can't be a bad thing. And even if you have turns where you don't or can't use it, it has 2 persuasion. Like that's pretty good.
I agree with you guys. I think I've had some really clutch moments with Local Fence, which is why I rank it where I rank it. I also, similar to you, CJ, I just default to the position that even if I don't get to use its ability to get it into a city and get to exchange some spice for some Solari for some spice, I'm still got 2 persuasion on the reveal. So the risk is low for me, and the potential reward is high because there are going to be clutch situations later in the game when that conversion can lead to victory points. So yeah, that's why I value this card.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We also have Truthsayer at about the same. This is interesting, a completely different card, but about the same rankings for us. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of stratification over our rankings. Who wants to start with Truthsayer?
Yeah, I mean, it's always rough. It's good. I like Truthsayer a lot. The only downside is that you have to discard the card to get the effect. Yeah, that's basically what I have to say.
It has decent.
I don't even know if I wouldn't even say that's a weakness necessarily. I think that's honestly one of the nicest strengths about this. It's a nice way if you've got a bit of a cluttered deck. You can use this to sift out like a Doom Desert Planet, for example, and sift it out for something else that you might want to make more use of and kind of cycle through your deck. We've talked obviously plenty about Unload Synergy, and this again pairs with that exceptionally well. It also has Emperor and Bene Gesserit access, which I think is underrated, as they are 2 of the lesser competed tracks. So this paired with, say, like Selective Breeding is very, very good because you can discard a card for a draw, and then you can then trash that card you just discarded. So you're basically going for Selective Breeding and getting an extra card for your troubles, which is very, very good.
Yeah, I think you've made a great point, and I think again it comes back to that unload or that discard synergy and unlock. This is one of the cards that can unlock it. This is the discard side of the equation. If you've got anything from Water Peddler to Ix Guild Compact and many others that you want to be unloading for benefits.
And as I mentioned, this is another one of the Bene Gesserit cards that you can just use straight away, and it's a nice setup card for other Bene Gesserit cards like Gene Manipulation and whatnot, which obviously get better or their only effects after you use ones. This is a nice way to kind of set those up. And to be fair, Emperor and Bene Gesserit spaces and the Council spaces, like you're more often than not going to have access to one of them somewhere on the line. It's very rare to have turns where they're all just suddenly blocked up early. So this is almost always you have opportunities to play this. Its reveal effect's not very good. One persuasion and a sword is not very good. You want to be using this card for its effect, which I think is potentially really really strong.
Part of how I rank this card, and I'd be curious to how you guys did this. I was very conscious when I was doing my rankings of the ranking of the of the low cost, like the 2-3 cost, 2-3-4 cost Benny Gesserit cards
Mm-hmm.
in general. And I have this one near the bottom of that pack, or maybe it is at the very bottom of that pack. So I have the Initiate, the Benny Gesserit Sister, Test of Humanity. I have all those cards above it slightly. So yeah, did you guys think about that when you're doing your rankings, like how to rank those 3-4 cost Benny cards?
Yeah, so for me, the Bene Gesserit Initiate is just slightly worse than Truthsayer because I value those unload effects a lot. And usually usually discarding a card to draw a card is as good as drawing a card. It's not always, but you can usually get away with discarding a dagger or something to get rid of, to draw into something you need. I just generally value things that give me more abilities to trigger effects than the things that are just static. Like I think that the Bene Gesserit Initiate's a good card. Its access is fine, but Truthsayer is something I would pick up over it generally. Almost all the time. Like the more I play with Truthsayer, the more I like it. But yeah, I did think about those. The Sister I think is ranked higher for me because it's a very flexible card. The 2 Persuasion's nice.
It was like I was just like, where do these all rank? Because they're just so similar in value and they all synergize off each other. So yeah, I was just yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I was thinking about it. I was curious about you guys.
Next is Fedaykin Death Commando. Interestingly, I've got it lowest at 63. Patience has it at 44, and BlackShadow at 42. I guess I'll just start since I have the lowest ranking. I think this card's fine. I think it's just fine. It's, I guess for me, I've moved away from wanting to go into the game with a Fremen alliance, or not Fremen alliance, Fremen bond sort of strategy. It is one of the best Fremen bond cards, I think, because it trashes a card, and it probably should be ranked a little bit higher for me, honestly. But I've just had some really bad experiences with it where and this is totally due to like luck, just not been able to align my Fremen cards a couple times, and then it just doesn't do much. But I mean, trashing cards is great. I have no problem with that. I just think that the rest of it is just it's just okay.
I think one thing worth noting, if I reckon if we were ranking just based on Imperium, I think this is like a top 20 card.
Yeah, I
Probably
agree. Yeah.
without question, because of how hard it was to trash cards. And obviously, it's still very, very good that you can do that. But I do think this card has lost. Out of all the cards in the game, I think this is the one that's probably lost the most value out of probably anything. Purely because there's now so many more ways to trash cards, and there's so many more ways to have swords on reveal. Because of, say, like restricted orders, for example. Which doesn't need you just pay 4 spice, go to High Council, and you're there. You've got it every time. Fedaykin obviously needs to be revealed in order to get those 3 swords, which is pretty decent.
Yeah, it's good.
And this paired with, like, say, Worm Riders, and if you've managed to go to, like, a trip to, say, Research Station early, that's potentially a lot of firepower you can offer here. I still think its trash ability is probably the I don't know. It's like it used to definitely be, I think, the stronger part of the card, but now it's like I'm not so sure. But I do think that this card has hurt a lot because of the X expansion, just because there's so many other ways to do what this card allows you to do now.
For me, it's all about that trash ability actually, and even though there are more trash cards, they're still limited. But I think besides the guild Chief Administrator, this is the lowest ranking trash card for me. Again, when I was ranking the trash cards, I was kind of very conscious of that hierarchy amongst them. And yeah, but I think I just maybe value trash cards a bit higher than you guys by the sounds of things.
No, I value them high. I just don't like this one. Like Guild Administrator is fine. I think like I just don't like this one at all. It forces me to basically forces me to commit to more Fremen synergies, and usually you get like 2 of the liaisons. Thank you.
Practice liaison.
Yeah, that you usually get like 2 of those, maybe 3. in your plays. So that's not like awful, and it's not terrible to do. It's just the problem is that there's so much overlap with this card and those cards where they both have blue symbols. It doesn't really diversify your deck all that much for me. But again, like maybe it's because like I would rather go to like a selective breeding to trash my cards and draw cards than to like play to like a desert space or city space and trash card. But I don't know. I mean, there's some good situations where I'd play this card. I just for me, it's dropped a little bit.
Yeah, I think for free cost, this card is fine.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most succinct way to put it. For free cost, this card is fine.
Guild Administrator, you have it right lower than that, Patience. And I actually like this card a lot more. But the real thing here is that Guild Administrator used to be one of the top 10 cards in the base game. It was so powerful because having access to the guild late game is absolutely necessary. It gave you access to Chome, so you could turn your spice into money,
Slowly.
and it trashed a card. So it seemed to do everything you needed to do early on. Nowadays, it's still good. Again, this one I think I like better than the Fadic Death Commando, despite the lack of a circle, a blue circle, is that it gives you some access, and I'd usually rather have that. And I mean, I guess I value that a little bit more than the swords.
This is a very decent kind of workhorse card, which of course is slightly ironic considering what exactly the guy is. Yeah, this is nice music there. I mean, it's cheap, it's easy, it's 2 cost, it lets you trash cards. That cannot be bad.
Right.
All right, its access is very limited. And obviously you want to be nowadays, especially, you want to be using this to go shipping pretty much almost exclusively. You're very rarely going to fold spaces to trash something. There are worlds you might use this to highline, I guess, but I think they're very few and far between. The real strength of this is drawing it to go like interstellar shipping, go up 2 bumps to the shipping track and trash a card, which is pretty good. But outside of that, it's not very flexible. Is the only problem.
Yeah, I agree. I have it ranked the highest of the 3 of us up
No, I
at
do.
45.
Yeah, I have 43. I have it just above yours.
Guild Administrator.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my bad. So I have it just below you, and far above BlackShadow. I spoke badly when we were talking about the Death Commando because I have it just below the Death Commando. So again, it's sort of this hierarchy of the trash cards. I might even flip them. I guess it's the revealability of the Death Commando for the swords if you have it with the with your Fremen Bond. But the Guild Administrator is a bit cheaper. And yeah, love going to interstellar shipping and trashing a card in the mid
That's
game.
its main.
Great.
Yeah.
The problem is if you pull this and say you're like 3rd or 4th in Torn Order and interstellar shipping's gone and maybe someone's also gone smuggling, it makes this card a bit awkward to use because you may not want to go mining if there's no bonus spice. You feel compelled to use it, but you're going to use it like so Imperial Basin for a spice. That feels pretty awkward. So that is the issue with the guild admin. If you get it first in turn order, then you're laughing. It's a great card, but just by being further back on, this immediately loses a lot of value.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with that too. I think that Patience has probably the most level-headed view of these 2 cards. They're both about the same. They probably should be closer together where we have them all spread out all over the place. It's probably right where it is in the ranking at about 51. But I think they're so similar in their actual function that I probably have them way too far apart in my estimation. All right, Bene Gesserit's sister. Again, a kind of a similar spread between all of us. I don't have too much to say about this because I've already mentioned it, but I just think this card's very flexible. It's 3 cost, gives you 2 persuasion or 2 swords. Usually you choose the most effective thing for whatever given moment. If you're going to try to win a combat, you choose the swords. If you're not, you just try to buy something. It's just a great card.
I think the big drawback of this is that it has no agent ability. I think that's the real problem with this card. It's obviously got faction access, which is nice to Bene Gesserit, which is cool to get in and then obviously use it to get selective breeding or something like that. But the problem is that it has no agent ability. I think really, really hurts this card in what it can truly achieve. Which on a reveal effect is kind of cool, but there are going to be times where neither is going to be particularly useful for you. And then if you are using to grab mint out of something, it's like you could probably be using other cards to do that. So
Oh, for
it
sure.
looks
Yeah.
good. The flexibility is nice. But if it had like any kind of agent, like if this allowed you to say draw a card as an agent ability, this one would go like way up. But I think the fact it doesn't just holds it back.
I'll agree with that. I think I may be overvaluing it a wee bit.
Do you like it
It's
better
just
than
a
Initiate?
workhorse.
You say you like it better than Initiate here. Do you after that? Do you like it better than Initiate?
Well, see, I think of it as a workhorse reveal card, right?
Yeah,
But wait a second, doesn't it also have access to the Benny track?
it does. Yeah.
And it benefits and counts.
Oh yeah. So that's why I have it up where it is. Yeah. Because limited faction access is a real challenge when you're trying to keep your deck slim, when you're not trying to buy too many cards. So I think that's why I do have it where I have it. But for me, that's what makes it a workhorse. Like either I'm playing it on the Benny track, not usually as a blue or a green. It's blue green Benny, right?
Green and Benny.
So I'm not usually playing it for a green. Usually going for the Benny track, or I'm revealing it, and then it's got flexibility, whatever I need, swords or the persuasion. So it's a workhorse card. I may be overvaluing it a slight bit, but I wouldn't move it down too far.
Yeah, I think I'm overvaluing it a little bit in my ranking. I don't know if Other Memory is worse than it. That's the thing. I'm looking at that, going, what am I doing? And I think Bene Gesserit's Sister would probably be. I think it's above Guild Administrator, to be honest. So I'd keep it close to where it is. But yeah, it's a reveal card. So this is the flip side of the Bene Gesserit Initiate, which you want to play. The Bene Gesserit Sister you want to hold. But I'm never really sad when I hold it. I mean, it always seems like I get what I want out of it. You can trash some of your convincing arguments, or a convincing argument or a dagger trash is always an upgrade when you have this card. It's just doing the same things. So, yeah, I like it. I'll always take it.
Yeah, I think the fact that it gives the influence or the swords means it kind of overfulfills, generally speaking, because obviously you can use it for either one, which is pretty cool, and it's like one of the only cards in the game, if not the only card in the game, that you can choose to have as either influence or swords. So
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It is cool. It's cool. Swiss Army Sister. Um,
I'll never look at her the same way.
that's right.
No, it's changed.
Bounty Hunter. This one's wow, kind of all over the place for us. Yeah.
Yeah, some of us would like this, some of us really don't.
I
All
like
right.
this card. I like this card. Like I think it's important. I think it's infiltrate is important. The money can be really important. Always being able to access Research Station alone is what gives this card its value, let alone the 2 Solar you're getting for doing so sometimes if somebody's already there.
Yeah, I think the cool thing with this is the fact that it's I mean, this is like one of like I know I already rated about like 40 odd, but this is kind of low key one of my favorite cards in the game. Because it's the only card that lets you infiltrate cities. So being someone that doesn't really like playing Helena very much, I value that pretty high, and that's really awesome. I play a lot of B, so obviously that's like, I'm pretty happy with that, for example. But the cool thing with this card is that its value does change throughout the game. Whereas early on, like getting hold of the Solari is huge to like rush to Swordmaster a lot sooner than you would normally get it. And this in the hands of Yuna is
It's crazy.
unbelievably powerful.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Because
Absolutely.
someone at some point in the turn is gonna have to go to the city, and as long as you just grab hold of Mentat, you're basically getting a Mentat for free. You're getting last action. With you're making a profit on your Mentat, and you just send it in. And like players kind of know like that you've got this, and they're gonna like not want to go to the cities until later on, because it makes them kind of wary, and that obviously is going to mess up with kind of how they want to do it. They don't want to be the person that goes to say like Carthag, and you're like, "Yep, cool, I'll cash in now." But someone has to do it at some point. Like, how many turns do you see where no one visits a city? It's almost like it never happens. So,
yeah.
Almost never. So at some point, assuming that you can get hold and make sure you're like one of the last people to act, you can get a lot of value out of this card. And again, heading to cities in your final action is just stronger because it gives you the last possible moment to put in your troops and decide if you want to do that. And again, obviously later on, the fact that you can use the infiltrate for research station is incredibly, incredibly good. So, and it's one cost, which I think is insane. I do not know how this is a one cost card. This
I agree.
This should be at least free.
I agree. Yeah, I 100% agree.
That's there are not many cards in the game I would say that are just the wrong value, but this being one I think is kind of absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This is one of the best infiltrate cards. Just behind the what is it? The guild one. The yeah, yellow triangle one.
Home
Chow.
delegate.
Chome Delegate. Chome Delegate. It's good. I probably have it too low on this, to be quite honest. I think it should.
I think I do as well. I should have.
I think it should be higher. I think it's around. Yeah. Well, I think you have it at about where it probably should be, because there are a lot of good cards above the 40 rank. But
To be fair, when you hit like 25, 30, it's like it is a bit elite tier. But
Yeah.
outside of like the obvious, oh, I must get those cards. This is definitely up there. It has. Right, you could argue its versatility isn't great, and you're using this for its effect. Its reveal of a persuasion, a sword, is not very good.
Yeah,
But it's just, and you could argue its reveal, its infiltrate. If you don't have water later on, can be not good, because obviously if you're going for a spice horse flow strategy, unless you've got access to research station, this is not really helping you get there. But it's gonna give you money. The money's gonna be good, to get High Council maybe sooner, or again Rush Sword Master. If you've got cards otherwise that are like Appropriate, for example, or Firm Grip, this can be a nice way to kind of help pay for that as well. I think this card has a lot of utility outside of it, but even just using it for its own effect cannot be bad.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, Ixian Engineer. Whoa.
I'm trying to understand our split on this because I have it so high.
You have it really high. So you have it at 25 patience. I have it at 54 and 62 for BlackShadow. To be fair, this one's hard to evaluate. I think this card is hard to evaluate, and I think I personally have it too low. Having played with it more, I played with it a bunch, and I was like, it's fine. And then I got a couple of different games, and I talked to some people about it, and I think I was using it wrong. And so I've kind of come around on it a little bit since I've made this list. So I don't know. I probably should have it higher again. Like this middle, yeah.
Yeah, I would say out of almost any card in the game, I think this is one of the most like situational game dependent cards I think there is. Out of any of those, a lot of cards you can just use that are just solid, whatever the game circumstances. Whatever you're trying to do. I think this one is one of the most situational, purely because obviously its big drawing fact is its reveal feature of having 3 more techs. You can reveal it and trash it for a point. This cannot be bad.
No.
Problem is you have to have 3 more tech tiles, and that can get very, very expensive.
Yeah,
which I think is the problem.
And
and
I
the
agree.
issue I have, I feel this is that it's Asian action. I think is awkward to use again unless there's loads of cheap text around. Like if the board is full of wind traps and troop transports and that sort of thing, great. I think that it's totally fine. Although again, it only has mining access, which is of course its own problem.
Yeah.
But getting the reveal effect for this is very difficult, and I think you can trap yourself a little bit sometimes with this card. You get it because you think, oh, I just get free text and I trash it for a point, which is good. But then you have to go and get that, and that's going to typically require a lot of spies. It's going to require you going out your way to get hold of these texts more often than not. And I feel like it can take away and kind of defocus you on what you're actually trying to do in the game. You kind of spend so much effort on Ixian Engineer to try and secure that point when you could get it so much easier in other cases.
No, I'm going to go out of my way and assume that the reason that this is ranked so high with patience, not just because it gives you a point, but that it enables you to get the point that you're going to eventually get with it. Because it even lets you buy 2 times. If you have if you go to Interstellar, you're on the second shipping track, you can buy twice, which is pretty insane. And that is actually one of the stronger uses of Ixian Engineer, because you get the 2 minus discount, right? Say you have like two or so spice sitting around, and you get 2 from the first rung of the shipping track. You can buy something that costs 3, and another thing that costs 3, or whatever. It gives you so much flexibility with that. It also lets you mine, but I think, like I was saying, I think it's a little low on my list. But I 100% agree with BlackShadow in that this card is dependent on your ability to buy the things you want. And you might not get them. Like if they're a bunch of low tech, other people might get there before you. And then you're kind of sitting on like, all right, well, I can go get this Holtzman engine, which is great, but it might be my only tech buy the entire game or something like that. You can get in these situations where you just don't have the ability to capitalize, and I have seen that happen a lot, where this Ixion engineer goes in the deck, and the person draws it, but they only have 2 tech at the end of the game. I've seen that happen a lot. So I think I think it's probably a little low on my list. I still think it is a middle of the road card just because it is so variable. But I think it is very powerful, and this will win you the game if you can get it to work.
One thing I'll say for let patients have at this, I think there is one thing I do find with this as well, is that I think this tends to feature more often than not, unless you happen to just luck into it late game where you've got the text and suddenly this just turns out, oh, okay, I'll just buy that and it's great. I tend to find if you have this card, you tend to have very, very chunky decks. And the main reason for that is, of course, because you're using your spice to buy text, you're not using it to go, say, selective breeding. And that is a big trap of this card. Until you get the free text, this isn't necessarily going to do very much. And also on the side of that, if I know someone has got Ixion Engineer, I will sometimes target the really cheap techs. If a 2-cost tech comes out, like Wind Traps or Objects comes out, I might not necessarily think it's the strongest thing for my game, but I will sometimes just straight target them because I know that that's a problem for them. And if they're going to try and get the victory point out of this, I will charge them the absolute maximum cost to do so.
Yeah.
So as the person who ranked Ixion Engineer at 25, I mean, the first thing to say is simply that it's a victory point, potentially. And that's the way you win the game. So that's, for me, a starting point. But that being said, I agree with a lot of what you guys have said. I think the most important thing is that it's very specific depending on when it's revealed. So if it's early in the deck, early in the game, that it's on Imperium Row, then somebody's taking it, and then sort of BlackShadow was just saying, then that they need those 3 techs during the game, and they their game gets a bit bent by it. Whereas if it's mid game or late game, then it's more like an opportunity for somebody who already had text for other reasons, right?
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating to me, and I found myself it really is like a magnet, this card, for attention, for disproportionate sometimes amounts of attention, because sometimes I find myself buying this card even though I have no hope of getting 3 texts, just to prevent the person who already has 3 texts from getting it. So I think that
That's a good point.
It's very interesting depending on when it flips. The fact that it is yellow access and that you use it to get spice, and then you use that spice to buy the tech potentially right away, to me is the automatic agent synergy of the card. And then the trick is, then getting it back into your deck in time to reveal and get points. Get the point for it. The last thing I want to say, and this has happened several times in games I've been in for me and for other people, is if you get an Ixion Engineer early and you're building towards it, and the second one flips that's in the deck, and you're lucky enough to get that one too, you can reveal them both at the same time for 2 points. And that is amazing. Great feeling.
Oh yeah, definitely. But the thing is, if you do that, there is a bit of ownership on the rest of the players to just if they know you've got both engineers, they really ought to be trying to stop you, because of course that's powerful. That has its own inverse effects, because of course if they're trying to get in your way, then maybe not they're doing the things that are inherently the best for their own game. But that kind of goes both ways, and your mileage is going to vary significantly from that. I do accept that. But I think that this Gerard is a trap sometimes, making you want to do something when, as the game pans out, you could be getting hold of your points more on. And it is not impossible to get hold of your free text late game, and your deck is chunky, and you just never draw it. And then this card has done potentially almost nothing.
Yeah.
Totally. I have seen this card sit on the row for be flipped mid game and just sit there and nobody even grabs it. It's a fascinating card with all sorts of situational variability.
I agree. I think for that, because as you mentioned, that it sort of forces people to act out of their worst interest in some cases. I think that is something to say for the strength of the card, the just inherent power level of the card, that it can win the game for someone if they pick it up. So you have to deny that. So I don't deny, or I don't disagree with your rating of it so high. I think that does speak to its power. So I think that there's more to this than just the playing of the card, right?
It's an incredibly opportunistic card.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Out of all the cards in the game, Like it's all about getting it and achieving its effects with the least kind of detriment to your own potential game, which you can do if you're not careful. You can just completely derail yourself trying to get the victory point for this, and that's something you have to be careful of.
Yep. All right, Gunthopter.
All right.
Patience has this one rated at 56. I have it at 45, and BlackShadow at 40. So kind of close.
Yeah, I as someone who likes to go fighting a lot, I really enjoy this card. I think it's, I'd be honest, like I don't really use it for its actual agent ability now for garrison losing a garrison troop, which is kind of weird considering that it is harder really nowadays to stop troops up. But because there's so many other ways to get strength into combat outside of just regular troops, I think this inherently has almost lost a bit of value there. It's the reveal effect, I think, for this, which is really, really good. Especially if you can get this card early and like turns 2, 3, 4, even 5. This can just like win you combat sometimes that you had absolutely no right in getting hold of. You know, to deploy a troop effectively for 5 strength out of nowhere, even if you have nothing garrisoned, is that cannot be bad.
I don't disagree with you. I think that it is a very strong reveal ability, and I've also stopped using it as its agent ability unless I need to. It doesn't. It doesn't have any persuasion as one, or no persuasion.
No persuasion.
No persuasion. Yeah, that's one of the reasons it's ranked so kind of middle of the tier for me here. In fact, I think it's a little high on my list because of what I'm talking about, like ranking higher for persuasion. I've also cooled on it a little bit since the base game. I think it was one of the stronger combat cards in the base game. And in Ix, it's dropped for me because there's just
so many other good ones,
yeah, there's so many other. But this card can be insane if you are going combat and you get artillery, Bashar, like any other thing that adds swords because it has a base 3. You're going to throw one more troop in. That's 5, potentially 6 for one reveal, one card. That could be very good. And it's a reasonable for persuasion. I think maybe a little overcosted to be quite honest in Ix, but in the base game it was reasonable.
I think the only issue with this, obviously, is it requires you having troops in your garrison, and that is a problem. You need to be able to find ways to get hold of troops in garrison. Now, say paired up with Sardaukar Legion is completely absurd.
Yep.
You know, and basically unblockable. I mean, you can do it almost like with as much as you want. This in a Helena hand as well can be very tricky because, of course, you can just visit a city wherever you want. You can garrison the troop. You don't necessarily have to deploy it, and you can mess with people that way. But if you don't have troops in your garrison, this card is doing almost nothing. That is its huge weakness. So you've got to be sure that you're going to have ways to garrison with either with whatever I just said,
shipping Sardaukar,
yeah. Going conspiring. Conspiring is almost necessary to get the most out of this card, and obviously conspiring is not exactly cheap. But you know, and this is not going to win you combats later on in the game. This needs to be paired with something else. But for like turns 3 and 4, this is very powerful and can easily get you over the line in some of those like sort of mid-game combats. You know, get a victory point that you had no other right in getting hold of.
Yeah. I think the early game scenario is really what you guys were talking about is its strength, because I don't think it packs enough punch in the late game to make it worth carrying in your deck and not having any persuasion. But I think the reason I rank it so low is because if I'm buying Gunthopter early game, that means I'm not buying another card. So unless the deck is really low quality, unless Imperium Row is really low quality, I should say, then I find the opportunity cost of taking this over another better 3 cost, or is it 4 cost? It's even 4
it's
cost.
4 cost, yeah.
Yeah, so another better 4 cost card. To me, it's not usually worth that trade-off. Although I agree that if I can get it in round 1 or round 2 in particular, and therefore, like it could win you a couple of mid-game combats on its own, like BlackShadow said.